Hey, this is Ian, and with you in the Fight Back. And today I want to talk about the logic of capital, because I was thinking back to an economics course I took several years ago, The Basic of Economics, and an article I read about the logic of capital. And during the course, I remember we discussed why rent controls or price controls of any sort were not to be done. And the professor was making a lot of assumptions, and I kind of want to go through them and tell you why they're pretty much fallacious. So the professor was assuming that the logic of capital is predominant. That's the way things are. It's natural. The market decides. It shouldn't be interfered with. Because through the laws of supply and demand, everyone will essentially get what they need. Businesses who supposedly provide jobs, they're producers, they will produce things that people want, they'll buy them, and the profit from the rich will eventually trickle down to others, whether in forms of jobs, goods, or whatnot. And that the role of the state in these situations is generally used to help foster the conditions for capitalist expansion, to pretty much get a clear playing field, almost as it were, for private industry. We have other situations where the state itself could be the motor for developing the economy. This would be through nationalized industries. Or the state, in a very rare exceptions, the state can break with the logic of capital and promote the needs of the people. Now, laying that out there, let's look at rent controls from supposedly the orthodox, neoclassical, neoliberal point of view. If you have rent control, say, on an apartment complex, well, the following will probably happen according to the neoliberals. What would happen would be that if you have rent controls on buildings, supposedly you can only rent to people at no more than higher than a certain level, and businesses say you can only rent for, say, $10 a day. And businesses, or landlords, in order to make it profitable for renting, you have to do it at $20. I know these figures are unrealistic, but please bear with me. So supposedly, if you can't rent homes to people at a profitable level, businesses will not, or landlords will not rent, and the supply of housing will dry up, and it will lead to a housing shortage. And this may be so for private companies, but that's assuming that it's just private companies, because of course, according to the neoliberal classical point of view, it's really only private businesses that create housing or create development. But what if, on the other hand, that the government was actually promoting, say, had rent controls, and they were also having a program of housing development? They're doing cooperatives, social housing. In that situation, there is really no necessity of a shortage in that case. And there's slightly more to this, which I'll go into momentarily. Because what we have is conservatives, or neoliberals, neoclassical economists. They're, of course, wedded to a certain ideology that the market is eternal, that it's wonderful, and all of that. And they really don't have a great historical view, but they're very good at something. And if you put an obstacle in the way of capital or private business, they're generally quite clear about what capital do when confronted with obstacles. So if you're suddenly putting hamperings on businesses, they'll have a capital strike, as it were. They'll withhold investment, they'll sabotage, and they may even fund fascist bands depending on the situation. And this would generally be so because capital would want to withhold investments if it can't make a substantial profit. It may sabotage because they don't want competition. And they really just want profit to be assured. They want the general conditions of the state to ensure that their profit-making abilities are unhampered with. And if suddenly there are rent controls, landlords can't make a profit, they'll withhold. Now, again, the state generally is used for the benefit of capital. But let's say we have a mildly reforming government, or even a full-on socialist, communist one. Let's say that government, instead of assuming that the market is eternal, that it is the way to go, they undertake a policy for the people, for the benefit of the people. Well, if if you're going to do this, you shouldn't assume capital is going to sit idly by and you can just implement your programs as you want. You need to anticipate capital's response in a situation. So if you're imposing rent controls, capital will probably go on strike. The landlords will not rent homes to people, and you'll have a housing shortage. In this situation, you have two options, fundamentally. You can either give in, accept the logic of capital, or you can just move in and take it over. So, too often reformers who make a move against capital, and then there's a capital strike, say they impose rent or price controls, and they just give in and accept the logic of the market. And this, of course, has disastrous effects. If that reforming government had made promises, the promises will not be fulfilled, like affordable housing for people. And it reinforces the ideological hold of the market on the people. They assume there is no alternative because, they can't carry out the program, we'll have a housing shortage. Yet, and because, capital will provide for us, because it is, for the benefit of the population, because the market decides. Well, capital, of course, doesn't follow the needs of the people, but just profit, the bottom line. The alternative is simply to move in. That means if landlords aren't going to rent homes, take them. If businesses, say, are supposed to produce, affordable clothes or something for the people and they refuse to because it's unprofitable, seize them. And this means move in. Seize them without compensation. Now say, okay, you seize the homes or you seize the apartments, but you can't get more apartment buildings. Well, say you have unemployment. Put those people to work building them. I just solved your unemployment problem. Now say the landlords refuse to give up their homes. Arm the workers. Take them. And people with arms is going to defend their conquest. What I'm getting at here is you need to mobilize the people. You need to raise consciousness, encourage democratic decision-making, and the focus should be on the development of the people, on what they can do, on what they can achieve, on what serves their needs, not on self-interest, not on profit, not on the bottom line. In this case, if you're focusing on, say, providing communal needs, as it were, the non-capitalist sector will develop. It will become the motor of the economy, and you can do what you can to hem in capital. Assuming the logic of capital means that if you actually attempt to undertake reforms and you're just assuming that logic that the market is best and you suddenly are interfering with it and bad things are happening, well, too many reformers just give in and their reforms are, they're bust. Nothing happens. The alternative is to move in, to make despotic inroads on the rights of private property, to assume that the needs of the population for basic housing, basic clothing, food are paramount to the needs of business. And that means to move in. To assume that the profit system is not eternal. It is not the best system. But to assume a system with the free development of each is the condition for the free development of all. Is the proper response. In that system, it means you have to move in on the prerogatives of capital. I hope this has been rather informative. And this is Ina saying, until next time.